Today I'm going to be sharing my December wrap-up where I talk about all the books I read in the final month of 2025. It was a very small little reading month for me. I only read 4 books in December, but the books I read were pretty good, a nice way to close out the year. There was only one book that I didn't really enjoy. There was one book that became a favorite of mine for the whole year, which you caught if you saw my best books of the year video, and then 2 books that were a fine, good time. As always, I'm going to go in order from my least favorite to my most favorite. So starting with the one book that was not the best of the month, and that was unfortunately Lightseekers by Femi Coyote. This is a book that was on my list of backlist books that I wanted to get to in 2025, which, side note, I did not do a very good job actually reading those this year. I did better in 2024 actually reading the backlist books I set out to read. 2025, I only read about half of the ones on my radar, so that wasn't great, but I did at least close out the year finishing one more that was on my list, and unfortunately did not love it. I didn't have a bad experience with the book while I was reading it, but it just didn't amount to much for me. I didn't feel satisfied by the end of it, and I actually finished it. A couple of days went by, and then I had this moment that I've never experienced this before, but I was like, oh my gosh, wait, did I finish reading Lightseekers? Because I don't remember what happened in the ending at all. Like, did I set it down, forget to finish it, and then lose the book and not realize what happened? And so I went back, found it on my shelves, picked it up, read the ending again, and I was like, oh no, I read this. It was just like so non-memorable to me, which was a very strange experience. But yeah, this one's just not really going to be sticking around in my brain very much. It is a crime mystery book where you're following this guy who is a psychologist of some sort, an investigative psychologist, and he travels to this town in Nigeria to help understand the mechanisms of this crime that occurred that they call the Okriki 3 murders, which I believe is based on a true event that actually happened. In this story, it was 3 college-age kids who got brutally murdered in the streets of this town as a result of what started as them instigating some crime, so they say, and so the town like went against them and just publicly killed them in this really brutal way. And one of those people's father is who hires this doctor to go to this Nigeria town to go investigate and see if he can actually figure out what really happened, because he doesn't believe that his son was really this criminal. He doesn't believe that he was involved in this cult like people are saying that he was. And so he wants to clear his son's name, so he hires this guy to go do that. And so that's what you follow in the story. He goes to this town, and the guy who's driving him, who was also hired by this man, is kind of like his partner through this, and they're working together to investigate things, talk to people, and they're running into a lot of issues in the town with people not wanting to talk to them, the police seeming like they're involved in covering up some things, and just getting to the bottom of what's going on in this town. So there's a lot of political and cultural significance to the country they're in and the circumstances there that are affecting what's going on and how this crime played out and the justice system and how everything's working there, which I don't think I've ever read a mystery or a crime novel set in Nigeria, so that was a whole new set of circumstances. So I found that interesting, and I was interested in the case. I was interested in the socio-political climate. I was interested in getting to the bottom of what's going on here. I was like actively involved in the story as it was going on, but once it finished, I was like, huh, that's strange. And this does kick off a series, but it resolves itself in the story. The next book just goes and starts to follow a different crime. But I just didn't attach to this novel by the end. I was like, it seems like a story that just kind of happened and then it was over and then it suddenly left my mind. There's some things to get into with this main character, like he's having some issues with his wife throughout the story. He has some children. There's this new woman who's like not a romantic interest, but like a romantic temptation, I guess. And like things just don't really come of all of that. There's surprises, there's connections that are revealed, there's twists and reveals and things. I didn't love the way the whole crime explanation did go down in the end. And I don't feel like there was a lot of use of this character being an investigative psychologist. I don't feel like we really got into like that psychology perspective as much as we could have. So I don't know, just a little bit of a bummer because I was excited for this one. I had it on my radar for a long time, and I just ended up giving it a 2-star. Next up, I listened to the audiobook of Medusa, and I had a enjoyable experience with this. I gave this a 3-star rating. This book is a origin story of Medusa, a young adult coming of age type of story. It read a little bit older for young adult though. Sometimes I find myself picking up young adult books and just feeling like the tone is really juvenile, but this had mature concepts and themes that did make it feel a little bit aged up. That's why I enjoyed it a little bit more, whereas sometimes it's a hit or miss if I still enjoy YA these days. I ended up giving this a 3-star because the book did what it set out to do. It was a Medusa origin story. You get what you sign up for in that. I'm not overly familiar with Medusa. I know generally the things about her, that she has snakes as her hair and that it will turn people to stone if the snakes look at you, that sort of thing. But I didn't remember a lot of her connections to other mythical figures in this time, and I really just feel like I don't have like a ton to say about it. Like, it was good, it was a Medusa origin story. You see her young, you see what happens to her, how she gets turned into a villain, and that's kind of the story. Because I haven't read other Medusa works, I don't know how this one fits into the greater lore about Medusa, if this is doing anything particularly different or interesting. In general, it was a story about power dynamics and the patriarchy and how perspective changes a story and changes who the villain is. All interesting concepts, all interesting themes. It was a really easy audiobook listen. If you like Greek mythology, I feel like you're gonna like it. I generally am interested in Greek mythology. I don't read a ton of retellings or these sorts of origin stories. I just sort of pick them up every now and again. I thought it was a good time. The audiobook was produced well. I just feel like I don't have a super strong opinion because I just don't know how this would compare to other Medusa stories. It kind of gave me just exactly what I was expecting it to give me. It was a decent time, and I would generally recommend it to anyone who seems interested in it. Next up is The Storm by Rachel Hawkins. And originally when I read this, I gave it a 3-star, but as I've sat with it and reflected on the story, I feel like I just enjoyed it quite a bit, so I am going to be giving it a 4-star rating. I've read several things from Rachel Hawkins now, and I feel like we have a pretty good track record, me and Rachel Hawkins. I think the only book that I didn't enjoy from her was The Villa, and then everything else I've read, I've had a good time with. There's just something about her writing style that I really enjoy. It really pulls me into her stories very quickly. This one in particular was quite atmospheric, and she just depicts these characters who you get so engaged with so quickly and like want to unravel the mysteries around them. This story is set in this beach town called St. Medard's Bay, and you're mainly following this woman named Geneva who is running this little inn there on the beach. She has inherited from her family, and she's running it alone, and she's fresh off a breakup, and she's preparing for hurricane season, and the inn's not doing well, and she's not making much money, and she's just really going through it. And then this local legend of a sort named Lo comes to stay at the inn for a couple weeks in the summer because she's traveling with this guy named August who is going to be writing Lo's story, and that works out great for Geneva because it's a good amount of cash for them to be staying long term at the inn. And through the story is told through multiple points of view. It's told through mixed media entries. You are uncovering, and Geneva is uncovering, the truth of what has gone on with Lo's story. This woman, Lo, is about 20 years older than Geneva, and she lives in infamy in the town because many years ago, back when she was a teenager, she ended up getting into this affair with this married man who was very well known in the town, and he ended up dying in a hurricane that came through the town, and everyone thought that she really murdered him, but she never actually went to jail for that. She just got away with it, but everyone still thinks that she's a murderer. And so that is the story that August is going to be uncovering. And there's just a lot going on in this story. You go through a lot of history, you go through a lot of different hurricanes, a lot of different people who have died in these hurricanes, uncover a lot of secret connections, figure out the truth between what happened with all of these people, how these people could be connected. It's just like that feeling of small towns that have all this like local history and lore and legends, and really getting to the truth of what happened there and understanding the connections. And once you do get down to the bottom of that, at the heart of the story, I really like the core of it and what it all comes down to and where it all started from. And it also has a little bit, like a teensy little bit of a mystical quality to it that I really enjoyed too, and would have loved to see even more of maybe told in the story. I think it's really interesting the POV it decides to come from, because there's all these characters and all this stuff going on that, you know, there's a story that you're uncovering that feels so big, but it focuses on so many different places. Like, it doesn't feel entirely grounded in Geneva's POV. It's not entirely just Lo's story either. It's like a mix of all these different things and a story that's told through generations, and it all comes together really well for this to be a relatively short book. It's not complicated to follow. It really unfolds in a way that makes a ton of sense. I think it was a really good time. This is a copy that the publisher sent to me. I think it comes out early in January, so it'll probably be out about when you're seeing this video. If you like Rachel Hawkins stuff, I would recommend picking this up. If you've never read from her before, I think this would be a fine starting point for her books as well, if this one sounds interesting to you. And I do think this would be a very good beach read as well for the summer, especially if you end up going to the beach and then it rains and so you can't go out on the beach and you're stuck inside and trying to kill some time, that would be the perfect atmosphere to read this book. And then lastly, my favorite book of the month, and one of the books that made it onto my favorite books of the year list, The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow, which I gave a 5-star. What more can I say about this book that has not already been said? It is so fantastic. If you've heard great things about this book and it sounds interesting to you, just go for it, just pick it up. It's gonna be so good. I heard so many good things about this before, and you never know if a book's gonna live up to those expectations or not, but this was exactly what I wanted. It is a rather complex book. It is a rather grand scale book, but it all starts really simply when you're following this guy who is this historian, and he has always been interested in the story of this lady knight from his country's past named Sir Una Everlasting. He really loves her story, studying her story, and he gets the opportunity to translate her story, but actually he ends up getting pulled into her story. This is a fantasy book, and he ends up getting pulled into the book at a point where she is nearing the end of her quest, and he is being sent on this mission to help her complete the end of her quest, which he knows is going to result in her death, which becomes important to the country's history and how she's this powerful hero for the country. So he wants to make sure that all goes smoothly and everything stays to path in the story. But things become complicated when he begins to fall in love with her. And the book just expands from there, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more deeply and deeply and deeply romantic. And it's just such a beautiful story. I love this concept of stories that span time and space and these grand epic love stories, and this executes that so well. And it is also, just from a craft perspective, such a well-written book. Every single sentence is perfectly penned. It's a book you want to take your time with. It's a book you want to sink into. It's not very long, but I took a long time reading it because I really went slow with it and just enjoyed the language of it and got immersed in the story. It was a really good read for December. That's a time when I am moving slower. And January, winter, also still a good time for that. So still a good time to pick this up if it's on your radar. I feel like in general, this was just really well received in the last year. I'm pretty sure it made it to the Goodreads Choice Awards for the fantasy section. I would not be surprised to see it on a lot of people's best of the year list. It is truly a fantastic book. So that's it for all the books I read in December. A short month, but a good month for reading. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you think about them, or let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!